Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy. Understanding the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. That's what we're going to analyze now. We're going to analyze 1 through 6. We've been through 6. There's 12 meditations. We've read 6. And this is the analysis of the first 6. So if you're reading this analysis, hopefully you've read the first 6 with Jimmy. And that wasn't easy reading, was it? I mean, this guy was a thinker. I want to quote the National Council of Teachers of English to begin with. And they said that book reading and essay reading, quote, are out, end quote. Teachers are urged instead to focus on, quote, media literacy, end quote, and short texts that students feel are, quote, relevant. Ladies and gentlemen, I have news for you. It absolutely matters not what students feel are relevant. Students have no idea what's relevant. Classical literature is relevant, and it's up to all of us to understand classical literature, to give it an understanding and appreciation, because quite frankly, the older you get, the more you understand relevance, and the younger you are, the less you understand of relevance. That's just the way it is. For example, if you read the first 6 meditations with me, you realize that there's a lot out there, and this was written a while ago, right? He was a Roman emperor. So Jimmy says that what they say is a lot of BS, and that would you rather be operated on by the brain surgeon who read books or the bullet points? You choose. That's why you read with Jimmy, is to understand and appreciate the classics. Let me quote Marianne Wolf, a UCLA neuroscientist, who says, quote, we must give our young an opportunity to understand who others are, not through little snapshots, but through immersion into the lives and thoughts and feelings of others, end quote. I couldn't have said it better, Marianne. That's actually what classical literature does. It immerses you. Remember, Ezra Pound said, language, literature is language charged with meaning. And that's what we've been reading for the first 6 meditations of Marcus Aurelius. So we immersed ourselves in the first 6. I think I took at least an hour of each of those 6 books for each of those. So there's a lot of BS being written nowadays that you don't have to worry about. Just stick with the classics. So this is a world of thoughtfulness, someone in the middle of battle, right? Some scholars question how Marcus could write like this with one hand, and on the other hand, he's slaughtering barbarians. Because if you remember, there's a lot about death in these first 6 meditations. He thinks a lot about that. Why? Well, because he faces death every day. And I don't think one excludes the other, thoughtfulness or depth. So the way you read these is slowly, thoughtfully thinking about what Marcus says, what he's trying to say, and then relating it to your own life. This analysis will try to do just that on some, just some. I'm not going to analyze all 6. You're not going to be here 6 hours, but I'm going to pull out from the 6 some items that I think are relevant that we can think about. And I want you to do this because we read classics to learn how others lead their lives, and from that how to lead our own. And thank goodness for George Long, the translator, because I can't read Greek. Let's begin. I'm not going to do meditation 1 because I already did that. If you're on my website and you look, you'll see the analysis of the first meditation separately from what we're doing here today. And in there, I offered you 55 pieces of advice that he received from the people that he knew. You remember? He was talking about the people who helped him become who he was. And he's giving full credit to those and what they taught him. So several I've heard, you're telling me, I got emails from you, they never really heard of Marcus Aurelius. And when they read that first one, at least 3 people said that they went out and bought the book. And I encourage that. That's great. You don't have to buy the book because I'm reading the book, George Long's translation, with you. But if you buy the book to read and spend time with it, I applaud you. That's great. Let's go on. Meditation 2. You know by now that Marcus numbers his thoughts in each meditation. So you have meditation 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Meditation 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And so on. It's not a linear read. These are thoughts that he writes down, kind of like a journal. He doesn't date them. He just number 1, number 2. They're not related often. One does not necessarily follow through. It could be about different ideas. But that's okay because they're not, this is like a journal, and that's why it's termed an essay by me. I call these essays or, journal writing. Like Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, which is on this website, is an essay. So that's why we want to learn about Henry David Thoreau, because it's his essay. He's not the narrator, but he's the writer. Just like Marcus is not the narrator, but he is the narrator because he's the writer, right? Number 1, begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, the arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. All of these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. But I, who have seen the nature of the good that is beautiful and of the bad that is ugly, and the nature of him who does wrong, that it is akin to me, not only of the same blood or seed, but that it participates in intelligence and portion of the divinity. I can neither be injured by any of them, for no one can fix on me what is ugly, nor can I be angry with my kinsman, nor hate him. For we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. Footnote by George. To act against one another, then, is contrary to nature. And it is acting against one another to be vexed and to turn away. When you act against one another, you get angry, vexed, and you turn away. I could spend an hour. I'm not going to spend an hour on this first entry, but I want to take it apart like we do at the beginning of every novel and story and essay that we do, because it's very important. Marcus tells himself in the first sentence to start his day by saying to himself that he will meet with the busybody, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, unsocial. Don't forget, he's the emperor. He's giving himself advice to tolerate people that he has to deal with. What do you do? What do you say to yourself in the morning? What do you say to yourself in the morning? I'm waiting for an answer. Do you make a to-do list of things you want to accomplish? Do you talk to yourself? Would you tell yourself anything like Marcus tells himself? Think about that. Begin the morning by saying to thyself. He's writing to himself. This is a journal. This is a meditation to himself. It's really a journal. He calls it meditations because he wants you to think about these things. That I shall meet. He's not going to turn anybody away. Why? He's the emperor. So he's going to meet with these people that are arrogant, ungrateful, deceitful, etc. The next sentence says, all these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. So you become a busybody, you become ungrateful, you become arrogant when you don't know the difference between good and evil. Is that true? These are qualities of people, don't forget. Busybody, you're being ungrateful, you're arrogant. But then note Marcus concludes that all these things happen by reason of their ignorance. Do you think that that's why you become deceitful? That's why you become ungrateful, because you don't know the difference between good and evil. Do you know the difference between good and evil? Here's his reasoning. I have seen the nature of good, and it's beautiful. Ugly is bad. The nature of him who does wrong that is akin to me is not only of the same blood. So somebody who does wrong and he's not my brother, he's still akin to me because he participates in intelligence and a portion of divinity. In other words, he's a human being. So if somebody does wrong, is somebody does bad, He's still a human being, and I can neither be injured by any of them. I can neither be injured by any of them, nor fix on me what is ugly. And they can't fix on me. They can't make me be bad like them. And then I can't really be angry at them or hate them. Why? Because then I get pissed off, vexed, right? And then that's not really being a human being. The ending here, remember? To act against one another is contrary to nature. So he's basically saying people who are bad, they can't hurt me. Can they? Well, Jimmy, they can shoot you. Well, if they got a gun or stab you, whatever. But really? He has seen the nature of good and evil. Good is beautiful, etc. So akin means essentially similar and compatible. It doesn't mean that is his brother or his cousin. He just shares being human, intelligence, and a portion of divinity. So he's a human, like all other humans. And humans, according to Marcus in this first one, are made for cooperation. They're made for cooperation, to cooperate. Do you understand that? So he can't be injured by them. So in other words, all these ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful people, they do not know the difference between good and evil. So they can't do really anything to him. And he can't be angry with them. Why? Because then he'll get mad and turn away from them, and we're here to cooperate. Isn't that a lesson here for all of us? Have you thought about yourself and your relationship to people around you like this? What is your relationship to others? Have you ever sat down and thought about that? And if you haven't, should you? Maybe you think you shouldn't. Maybe you're right. Why do you get so angry when ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsociable people? Why do you get so angry at people? According to Marcus, they just don't, these people that you get angry because they're arrogant, they just don't know good and evil. But do you believe that? Do you really believe that that's the reason a person is arrogant? You've seen arrogant people. You've seen deceitful people. If a person's deceitful, do you think it's because he doesn't know the difference between good and evil? What is good? What is evil? You see how you can spend 3 hours thinking about this in your own mind. We're not going to do that. Some of you may say it's easy for him to say this. He's the emperor. Well, yeah. But so what? How does that differ from you or me saying the same thing? Are you saying that you can't know the difference between good and evil like Marcus, the emperor? That it's exclusive to being the emperor? Are you saying that you think the reverse is true, that evil is beautiful and that good is ugly? Really? Well, Jimmy, there are some people out there that think evil is better than good, isn't it? To really hurt people, they take pleasure in that. What do they call that, Jimmy? Masochism? I think it's masochism. I don't know. Masochism is when you hurt people and take pleasure in it? Or we don't share the commonness of being humans, even though we are not cousins. Well, I only care about my relatives. Is that true? You don't care about anybody else? We're coming off the highway in San Francisco several years ago, and there's a guy, he's a homeless guy, and he's got a McDonald's cup, one of those big soda cups, empty. And he's standing there holding onto a pole. And as the cars pull up off the expressway and slow down for the stop sign, he looks at him and he leans over holding onto the pole. And he says, holding out the cup, "Amnesty, amnesty." I gave him $1. And he goes, "Why are you giving him money?" I said, "Well, look at him. Look at him. He's a human being, and he's reduced to holding onto a pole with a McDonald's cup. He looked like he hadn't had a bath in 3 months, bearded, just dirty. And he's asking for amnesty. What do you think? Well, we're made for cooperation. So his conclusion can't be defined to act against one another is contrary to nature. Acting against, you become angry and you turn away. In other words, when you get angry, you walk away. You shouldn't do that. You get so angry, this person just doesn't understand what I'm saying. And you get ticked off and you walk away. It's never any good. Never any good. Never. Because our job is to cooperate. And if you read the first 6 meditations, and I gave you a test just now and said, what does Marcus recommend to do when you're getting angry with someone for not understanding you? What does he say? Or not understanding the situation. He says it's your job to help him understand because he's lost his way. Isn't that true? So Marcus tells us it's up to us to help them, and you can only do that, ladies and gentlemen, through dialogue, not monologue. Not monologue. You got to have a dialogue. I know every time I have a dialogue, I tick people off because I start asking questions. And that's my job in life, is to ask questions, not only of you, but of myself. George Long put a footnote in the first meditation from Xenophon memory. So what is this all about? Well, this guy is a military memoir writer. His memoirs was Antibas. It gives an account of 10,000, a Greek army of mercenaries hired by Cyrus the Younger to help him seize the throne of Persia from his brother. So he wrote a book, and Marcus, being a military man, probably read that memoir, right? So here's the reference. Now, Xenophon's relationship to Socrates. Plato was a student of Socrates. Aristotle was a student of Plato. Those 3 people we're going to read, if we haven't read already, on this website. Socrates, Plato. Socrates didn't write anything. Plato wrote about Socrates, and Aristotle wrote volumes. I always refer to Aristotle in analyzing books because he wrote the Poetics, which is my Bible for understanding tragedy and plot and character. Anyway, the reference goes like this. I could read this for you. Maybe I should. Again, on meeting the old comrade, he said, where do you come from? This is Socrates asking, where do you come from, Euthyrus? I came home when the war ended, Socrates, Euthyrus says. And I'm living here now, and since we've lost our foreign property, my father left me nothing in Attica, so I was forced to settle down here and work my living for the hands. And I think it's better than begging, especially as I have no security to offer for a loan. So he's telling Socrates he's here to work. And Socrates says, well, how long will you have the strength, do you think, to earn your living for work? Which is an excellent question, isn't it? Oh, not long, he says. Well, remember, when you get old, you're going to have to spend money and nobody will be willing to pay for you and your labor. In other words, you're going to always need income. Well, that's true, says the guy. And Socrates says, well, then it's probably better to take up some kind of work that will assure you of competence when you get old, to go to somebody who's better off and wants an assistant maybe, or a return for your services by acting as his bailiff, helper, helping to get in the crops, looking after his property. I shouldn't like to make myself a slave, he tells Socrates. Here's an interesting word, isn't it? But surely those who control their cities and take charge of public affairs are thought more respectable, not more slavish, right? Says Socrates. In other words, is the government full of slaves? Briefly, I have no inclination to expose myself to any man's censor. I don't want to be mocked or, I don't want to be berated by anybody. And Socrates, who's a very wise man, says, but you see, Euthyrus, it is by no means easy to find a post, a job in which one is not liable to censure, which is really what? Reprimanding. Whatever you do, whatever one does, it is difficult to avoid mistakes. Would you agree with that, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know anybody that's perfect. It's difficult to escape unfair criticism, even if one makes no mistakes, which means, right, fake news, right, fake lies. I wonder if you find it easy to avoid complaints entirely, even in your present employers. You should try, therefore, to have no truck with grumblers. Don't hang around grumblers, or attach yourself to considerate masters, to undertake such duties as can be performed, and beware of any that are too much for you. And whatever you do, to give your best and to put your heart into the business. That's one of Marcus's great thoughts in his meditation. Do your best with whatever you're doing at the time. And in this way, I think you are most likely to escape censure, find relief from your difficulties, and live in ease and security in your old age. Isn't that a beautiful... Now, if George Long is saying that reference here, this passage here, was what Marcus had in mind when he wrote that first meditation for number 2, the one we just read. Do you believe that? Well, there can only be 2 answers. Yes, he did. No, he didn't. That's the only 2 answers. So this is a good place to talk about that, because there's usually only 2 answers to any question you ask, yes or no, 1 and 0, right? That's really the key. Well, Jim, what about the maybe? What about maybe? It's like when you hear somebody tell the weather, well, it's going to be a little hot and a little cold. What does that mean? Jimmy will leave that up to you, whether you believe that influenced Marcus's meditation. It really doesn't matter. But it does matter if you read this. It gives you more depth of understanding and appreciation to what Marcus Aurelius wrote, doesn't it? Do your best. Do your best. We just finished considerable time on this first entry of meditation 2. And you're thinking, Jimmy, I don't have 8 hours to sit here and read every one of these things and have you talk to me about them. You don't? Well, I'll see. No, of course not. So what I did is I took pieces, a little piece here, a little piece there, for you to contemplate. Is that okay with you? Let's start slicing. From number 2, meditation 4. A limit of time is fixed for thee, which if thou dost not use for clearing away the clouds from thy mind, it will go, and thou wilt go, and it will never return. You've seen this theme throughout the first 6 meditations, his idea of the present, living in the moment. Forget about the past, don't worry about the future, look at the present. And he's saying here, you've got a limited amount of time. We can talk for a half hour about what is time, which if you don't use it for clearing away the clouds from thy mind, he's saying you've got clouds in your mind, in his mind. Because who's thee? He's talking to thee. Who's thee? You know who thee is? Could be you, thee, but it's really him too. So he's telling himself he's got a limited amount of time, and if he doesn't use it to clear away the clouds from thy mind, his mind, or your mind, it will go. What's it? Time, life will go. And doubt will go. You're going to die, and it will never return. Robert Henri was an American painter, and he wrote a book called The Art Spirit. In The Art Spirit, he wrote, quote, "The mind is a tool. It is either clogged, bound, and rusty, or it's a clear way to and from the soul. An artist should not be afraid of his tools. He should not be afraid to know, period." End quote. You may not be an artist. You may be an artist. What is an artist? He's telling people your mind is either clogged, bound, and rusty, or it's clear way to and from the soul. Marcus Aurelius believes we have a soul. You've seen that in the first 6 meditations. Well, Jimmy, I don't believe we have a soul. I can't feel it, touch it. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's okay. Remember, put aside what you believe and let's look at what he believes. Okay? It doesn't matter if you believe you have a soul or not. He believes he has a soul. Clearly, Robert Henri believes he has a soul. He believes people have souls. And we're going to get into that in this analysis and other analysis. But what this meditation is telling you is that there's a limited amount of time you have. When Jimmy started his business, he built it on two pillars: service and unduplicated knowledge. He defines service this way: there's 24 hours in a day. No one that he knew at that time is willing to throw 24 hours at a problem because they get distracted. So Jimmy figured, correctly so, and had been in business over 30 years, so these pillars work, that there is no 25th hour. As much as I look for it, and I beg for it sometimes, and I wish I had more time to solve this client's problem, I never found the 25th hour. I had to settle for the 24. You understand that? You only have so much time. And unfortunately, you don't know when the clock is going to run out. So Marcus Aurelius is saying, make the best of it. And the way you make a best of it is to have a clear mind. Don't be clouded with bullshit. Sorry. You understand? Do you understand? John Locke was an English philosopher and physician and regarded as an influential thinker in the Enlightenment. He's called the father of liberalism. You can look him up, John Locke, but he had a theory. And that the human mind is a blank slate at birth. In other words, it's like a blackboard that's nothing on the blackboard. Now, I'm dating myself because most of you don't even know what a blackboard is. But imagine a sheet of paper. There's nothing on the sheet of paper. And what happens as you grow older through life is that people start writing on your blackboard. So people, in other words, ideas come from experience, and the theory that he advanced is called empiricism. It's empirical. It comes from something that exists. It's empirical. People write on your blackboard. You get born, people write on it, your friends write on it, your teachers write on it, your parents write on it, your siblings write on it. Experience writes on it, you know. Experience will write on your blackboard. Not if you take drugs. If you take drugs, you don't even know what the hell reality is. So don't do drugs. But experience writes on your blackboard. And you wake up sometimes when you're 30 years old and you think, well, I believe this. And then you start realizing that what you believe as this is not this, but it's that. And you start doubting yourself and saying, what the hell? Where did that come from? Well, it came from someone writing on your blackboard. I remember coming home one day from college. I went to Catholic college. And I came home, and this was many, many years ago when Time magazine had a headline, God is Dead. And I came home, and I was at a Catholic college. And I came home to my mother, and I said, Mom, there is no God. And she started crying. She started crying, and I felt so bad. I said, Mom, I'm only kidding. I'm questioning my faith. That's what they told us to do at school. I'm questioning my faith. Oh, why did I send you to college to me? And I calmed her down. But that's what happened. Somebody wrote on my blackboard. And it's up to you and me, the clouds that Marcus Aurelius is talking about, to erase your blackboard and write down what you want, what you believe to be true, until someone proves to you it's not true. That's what the blackboard theory is. So Marcus Aurelius, reading his meditations, actually helps you erase your blackboard. It should. Now, if you're reading this and you're struggling, it's either because you're not taking enough time to read it, you don't understand it, and the only way to overcome that lack of understanding is to reread it again and again. And maybe you still don't get it because you're not ready for it. You have to be ready for this type of thinking. You know? For example, I got a football game. I got to watch the football. I can't read Marcus Aurelius. Got to go watch football. Great. Good for you. If you want to spend a couple hours watching a football game, congratulations. You're never going to get those hours back. Never. Well, it's still exciting, Jimmy. Good. I'm glad you live for the moment, but you'll never get those 2 hours back. Just like you won't. And that's why I'm so honored, and I feel very honored that you're spending the time reading with me. Because I'll never get this time back with you. That I will never get it back. Sometimes my wife says, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "Well, people got to know. They got to know. Because they don't know. A lot of people don't know. They wrote BS on their blankets." Meditation 2, number 7. Do the things external which fall upon thee distract thee? Give thyself time to learn something new and good and cease to be whirled around. Isn't that interesting? Does the stuff outside of yourself distract you? Give yourself time to learn something new and good, and don't be whirled around. Forget the football game for once. Read a book. Read Marcus Aurelius. Think about life. Take your wife out to dinner. Do outside events affect you? Marcus is telling us here not to let them whirl us around. Do you control it? You can only control your reaction to it. I had the dryer go out. It busted in the back. That little vent came out from the back. It was spewing dust all over. And it's in a tight space. Jimmy couldn't get in it at first. He had to figure it out. Then he called the service. That's a $149 charge just to come out. And we were in the middle of washing clothes, and I said, I got to do it myself. And it took literally an hour to do this. Turn the breakers off, blah, blah, blah. I'll never get that time back. That was an outside event. But I actually took pleasure in it because I am not a handyman. My wife doesn't trust me with any kind of tool, any hammer, forget about it. Because I'm not. I'm not good at it. I know my limitations. Right? So outside events don't whirl around us. I wasn't distracted, but it was a task I had to do. Something new and good. I learned something by doing it. Your reaction to event is governed by you. Do you understand that? The event has nothing to do with your reactions. It's just an event. What do you mean? What a rock falling on my house is just an event, and this terrible hurricane that just hit up in North Carolina? Your reaction to the hurricane in North Carolina is the only thing you can control. You cannot control anything else. Well, Jimmy, I'm in the middle of that and I need help. Of course you do. We all do. But so do others. Imagine the 200 plus people that died in that hurricane. You see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? Any event, a birthday gift, a car accident, a flunking grade, the death of a parent, your reaction to any of these events isn't within the event itself. It's within you. It's your reaction to the event. The event. When I taught English for the first few years, it was sophomores in high school. What interests was at a boys' Catholic school? What interests you? Cars, sir. Cars, Mister. Cars. I said, that's great. Cars are cool. But is the car interesting in itself? What are you talking about? Of course it is. It's a car. And it took me, 3 weeks to try and help them understand it's not the car. Some of them never got it. It will always be the car. Always be the car. It's not the car. It's your reaction to the car. I used to hold up my hand in these sessions with them, and I'd say, I can make my hand interesting. And I would talk for 10 minutes about my hand. They would fall asleep. I'm kidding. They would not fall asleep. As a concept, this is to understand. Marcus understood it inherently in this entry. It's a hard concept. Number 16. This is a long one, but it's important. The soul of man does violence to itself first when it becomes an abscess, a tumor on the universe. so far as it can. For to be vexed, to be angry at anything which happens is a separation of ourself from nature. So when you get angry, he's saying you separate yourself from nature. Why? Don't forget, we're here to cooperate. And when we get angry, we are not part of nature anymore, right? In some part which the natures of all things are contained. In the next place, the soul does violence to itself when it turns away from any man or moves towards with the intention of injuring. You want to hurt somebody. You separate yourself from nature, right? Such are the souls of those who are angry. And in the third place, the soul does violence to itself when it is overpowered by pleasure or pain. Fourth, when it plays a part and does and says anything insincerely and untruly, lies. And finally, fifth, when any act of its own or any improvement to be without aim, it's rudderless. It doesn't have a purpose, right? So he's basically saying you do violence to yourself, to your soul, when you do any of these five things. The end of rational animals is to follow the reason and the law of the most ancient city and polity, Rome. The end of rational animals, men and women are rational animals, is to follow reason and the law. Reason and the law. So what's an abscess? That's a painful pus-filled pocket that forms in your body as a result of an infection. And a tumor is a mass of abnormal cells that form in your body. That's not the soul, you may say. Well, that's okay. He's talking about the soul does violence to itself when it becomes an abscess or tumor. Well, Jimmy, I don't believe in the soul, so what the hell are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about not your soul, but Marcus's. He believes in the soul, and he's talking about the soul, which is your inner being, your rational side, your reasoning side, inside of you, yourself. Do you believe you have a self? Or are you just an animal? I'm just asking. Tumors occur when cells divide and grow excessively in the body. Normally, the body controls cell growth, blah, blah, blah. New cells are created to replace older ones. This is what we know about the abscess or tumor, but what did Marcus know about abscesses and tumors? Don't forget, this is not medical science way back when. Well, he was talking about the soul. He knows what an abscess is and a tumor is because they did talk about that. People had tumors in those days, and that's the Greek word that George Long used. But the soul is a concept that has many definitions. Let's talk about the soul. Well, Jimmy, I want to skip this part. I don't think you should, even if you don't believe you have one. Why? Because we're trying to understand what Marcus is saying. In religion and philosophy, the soul is a non-material essence of a person. The non-material essence of a person. It includes their identity, personality, memories, you. It's your you. The soul is often considered to be synonymous with the mind or the self. In theology, the soul is considered to be divine and to survive death. We talked about Marcus Aurelius earlier in some of the meditations where he says, we are the stuff stars made of. He didn't say that. That was the astronomer. I got to remember his name. But he believes that you cannot bring anything into existence which didn't already exist. E equals MC squared. He inherently knew this, ladies and gentlemen. So the soul is considered to be divine and survive. In ordinary language, the soul can refer to a person's total self. Okay? Can we agree on that for our understanding of Marcus Aurelius? Here, some people in the audience will love this sentence, because I looked this up. Scientific research has concluded there is actually no evidence for the existence of a human soul. Well, then you tell me why a lot of people think they have one. when science tells us that it doesn't exist, right? You never saw the X-ray machine take a picture of your tooth until the dentist brought it out on that, or he pulled it up on his computer. Now he used to bring it out on little X-ray pieces of film, but now they just bring it up in the computer. You never felt anything. You never saw anything. So how the hell do you know that that's your tooth? Unless you believe the dentist. Because you didn't certainly sense anything, but there was such a thing. We talked about light in one of our examination analysis, right? Light is just what? It's what happens with waves. Things don't have light. It's reflections, right? Of the spectrum. The question, do you believe there is or not? But Marcus did. And so he says, the soul does violence to itself when those anger, hurting others, pleasure or pain, lies, being rudderless. I want you to review the text for a moment, okay? Just take a peek, take a moment, and look at what we just read. And say to yourself, let's pretend you have a soul, okay? Do you do violence to your soul, right? What are the ways? When you get angry. Of course you do, because you lose control of yourself. That's the whole idea of anger, losing control of yourself, right? Love and hate are the two most powerful emotions. And when you do either of them, when you either love passionately or hate passionately, you lose control of you do violence to your soul. Soul is balance. When you turn away from any other man, or you move to hurt somebody, you do violence to yourself. How's that possible, Jimmy? If I smack a guy, I'm hurting him, not me. Is that true? Is that true? You see violent episodes on the news sometimes, right? Is that person who commits violence on another person hurting himself or the other person? Well, Jimmy, I've seen guys with no repentance and they take pleasure in hurting other people. Well, that would be pure evil, wouldn't that? But he's really hurt. He just doesn't understand the difference between good and evil. That would be Marcus. I'm just saying Marcus Aurelius would say that. He just doesn't understand, and we should help him to understand. But how do you help a guy who's pure evil? I'm not saying I agree with everything Marcus Aurelius says. I have a lot of trouble with some of the things he said. But that's not we're not here to talk about my trouble. We're here to talk about your understanding and appreciation of what this guy is all about and how he says we hurt ourselves. And we certainly do when we turn away from someone who needs help. We hurt ourselves. Or when we lie. Well, Jimmy, sometimes you gotta lie. Really? When is that? Email me, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Tell me when you have to lie. When is a good example of when you have to lie? Well, if someone was dying, I don't want to tell them they're dying. I'm saying they're going to get better. So I'm going to just tell them it's better. That's a lie. Well, is that better? You see, these are complex questions. Complex questions. All right. So review the text. Think about it. The conclusion is the end of rational animals is to follow reason and law, which is the case Rome. Follow reason and law. Reason is Marcus Aurelius's guiding principle, to reason, to think, to not be an elephant who doesn't think, to not be a lion who doesn't think. Well, Jimmy, animals think. Well, they may, but they don't reason. A lion, when he's hungry, cannot decide not to kill you. It will kill you. There was that guy who used to live among the gorillas, I think, and then they killed him one day. He thought he had a great relationship with them, but one day, I have to look that guy up. It just dawned on me now. I should have looked it up and prepped for this analysis, but it just came to me. There was a guy who lived with gorillas, and he thought he was having a great relationship, and then they killed him. Why? Because they're gorillas. They're gorillas. They don't think. Do you do violence to yourself? That is the working. Do you work against your nature? What do you think is the nature of human beings? To be jerks? To be kind? To turn the other cheek? An eye for an eye? What do you believe? Jimmy had a philosophy teacher that said something like, we don't have an endless supply of emotional capital. Called it emotional capital. Jimmy had to think long and hard about that statement. What do you mean emotional capital? Do you have an unlimited amount of love, an unlimited amount of hate? Because those are emotions, right? For one thing, what is emotional capital? For another, he was translating emotion into capital, like it's currency. Do you? What is emotional capital? Can you be drained? I know I have had experience with some people say, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I cannot take care. I can't do it anymore. Can't. That's a horrible state to be in, isn't it? Emotions are physical mental states brought by neurophysiological changes associated with thoughts, feelings, behavior, blah, blah, blah. Anger, fear, surprise, annoyance. Sometimes you can find 18,000 emotions, but emotions are really, they're basic emotions, right? Love, shame, anxiety, sadness. Two strongest ones I already told you, love and hate. There are no stronger emotions. None. But what's the difference between happiness and enjoyment? Some people think these are emotions and that they're separate. How do you define your words? Interesting, Marcus seems to think that emotions are what causes violence to your soul. Anger, hurting others, lies, and having no purpose, just floating through life. I don't know. Do you agree with that? You agree with that? I know when anger and you lose control, in other words, your reason, you don't reason anymore. Remember, reason is a guiding principle. If you don't think, you don't reason. And if you hurt others, you lie. Is there a limit to your emotions? To how much how much would you do violence to your soul? Sorry, type. Do you believe Marcus? I don't know. It's something to think about. Meditation 3, number 10. Throwing away then all things, hold to these only which are a few. So forget about everything else and just hold on to these. Who's he talking to? You, me, himself, right? Besides, bear in mind that every man lives only in the present time, which is an indivisible point, and that all the rest of his life is either past or it is uncertain future. Short, then, is the time which every man lives, and small the nook of the earth where he lives, and short, too, the longest posthumous fame. And even this only continued by a succession of poor human beings who will very soon die, and who know not even themselves, which much less who died long ago. Well, Jimmy, this is depressing. That's one of the reasons I really want to stop this. I don't want to read the next 6. It's just depressing. Is it? Or is it exciting? Or is it interesting? Or what is it? Think about this. So I drew a little diagram here. He said this is it's indivisible, right? This moment in time we're together right now is indivisible. If I keep talking, what I just said is going to be in the past. And if I keep talking, what I'm about to say will be in the future. And it's really the now. And he's saying that every man lives in the now. And short is that time. Small is the nook of earth. You understand what he's saying? This is very important, by the way. Have you ever tried to catch the present moment? Try to catch it. Here's one of the ways you can test this. The next time you go to bed, try to catch yourself at the moment you lose consciousness. In other words, the moment you fall asleep. Have you ever tried to watch it? Well, Jimmy, that's just crazy. Maybe it is. But have you ever tried, because you do sleep. We all need sleep. Some people need more or less than others, but we all sleep. And what happens when we sleep is we go right? We're unconscious. We're alive, but your mind goes to sleep and you dream 3 times a night at least. Well, Jimmy, I don't remember them. Well, of course you don't, but you could and you should. There's REM sleep. Sleep is a very interesting study. But one of the ways to talk about the present moment is to try and catch yourself when you pass out. I'm not talking about from drinking too much. Forget that. I'm talking about natural sleep. Well, Jimmy, I can't sleep. That's the problem. Well, read more, exercise more. You can't really catch the present moment. It's too quick. It's replaced by the future. And then you'll start feeling nausea like John Paul Sartre wrote in his book called Nausea. I should read that book, maybe. Maybe you should read it on your own. If you live in the past too much, oh, the good old days. Oh, I remember when I was a young man, they didn't do that. No. You miss the present moment entirely. If you stay in the past, you don't even know what the hell's going around you now. And if you anticipate the future, oh, I wish I was a wishing well, right? James Cagney line. I wish you were a wishing well. And then he throws the grapefruit. You miss, right? You miss the present too. So try to live in the now. Because time, and I told you we were going to talk about this, is an interesting concept. What is time? Physicists define it as a progression of events from past to present to future. Time. Einstein's special general relativity showed us time is relative. What does that mean? Well, it depends on the reference of the observer. You're an observer, I'm an observer. Everybody listening to me is an observer. For example, if you're in an elevator falling through space and there's no windows, you wouldn't really know you're falling. You wouldn't. You need a reference point. And that's what time gives you, theoretically. Here's a better example. The light from our sun takes 500 seconds to reach the earth. I want you to think about this. You can't look at the sun, you'll go blind, right? But the light from there takes 500 seconds, 8 minutes, 20 seconds about. So if the sun exploded, you wouldn't know it for 8 minutes, pardon me. Think about that. What do you mean? If it explodes, I'd know it instantly. No, because the light travels. You have to know a little science to understand this, right? Sound is the same thing. You don't hear a sound. It travels 600 miles a second, I believe. The nearest star to us is called Proxima Centauri. It's about 4.2 light years away, and you can find it on a star map. Just, ask your cell phone, where is Proxima Centauri? Or get one of those beautiful star applications. A light year is the distance that light travels to Earth in 1 year. That's called a light year. So 1 light year is 6 trillion miles. I want you to think about this. One light year is 6 trillion miles. It's a hard thing. 12 zeros. So the light from this star right here, when you find it in the night sky, and you look at it, right? And remember, planets do not generate light, they reflect light, but this is a star and it generates light. And it's 6 trillion miles, right? Times 4.2, or about 25 trillion miles. Jesus Christ. Can you wrap your arms around that? Which means the light you see from there left 4.2 of our years, light years, ago. So if the star blew up, we would be looking at something that isn't there now. What? If that star blew up now, today, this moment. I don't know where you're at in the world, but it's 3:15 in the afternoon here. If that star blew up now, I wouldn't know it for 4.2 years later. I'd be looking at it now, but it wouldn't be there now. Do you see this? Do you understand? Is your head spinning? Is your head spinning? Well, Jimmy, what the hell has this got to do with Marcus Aurelius? Well, he's talking about the now. The now. What is the now? What is the now? Jim Lovell, the guy who commanded Apollo 13, there's a great documentary about that and a movie, but the documentary is heads over heels over the movie. He was the guy, the astronaut on there. There are three kinds of people in the world: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. Which kind are you? Which kind are you? Do you make things happen? Do you wonder what happened? Or do you watch things happen? Which kind are you? Jim Lovell describes seeing the Earth from Apollo 13 as a moment where he realized how small and fragile our planet is, stating that he could put my thumb up to the window of his spacecraft and completely hide the Earth. Right? Marcus Aurelius said way back when, the small nook of Earth where he lives. He didn't have to go to space to realize he's on a small speck in the universe. I don't know about you, but that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Isn't it? He often recounted this. Gene Kranz was the guy who brought him back. He was the NASA flight director. He wrote a great book, Failure is Not an Option. If you get a chance, you should buy it. It's a great book. It's not a classic, but it's a good book. Well, Jimmy, I thought you only read classics. I only read classics on this website. But I'm not saying you shouldn't read books. I'm reading classics because they enrich our lives and teach us how to lead but Failure is Not an Option is a great account of what Gene Kranz had to do to get those people back alive. And in that book he wrote, it isn't equipment that wins battles. It's the quality and determination of the people fighting for a cause in which they believe. And isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Right? It's not the equipment that matters. It's the people. And if they believe in it. So if you believe you have a soul, or if you believe you don't have a soul, you've got something going on inside of you that is not like anything else in the world, because you're unique. It's called yourself. Now, well, Jimmy, I just believe when you die, you die. That's great, good. But in the meantime, what are you doing? What are you doing in the meantime? Marcus didn't have to go to space to gain his perspective. There are three different kinds of brains, writes Niccolo Machiavelli. We're going to read that on Jimmy's website, if we haven't already. We're going to read The Prince. This is Niccolo Machiavelli in the Renaissance, hundreds of years before Jim Lovell went into space, when he said this. There are three different kinds of brains. One understands things unassisted. Another understands when shown by others. The third kind understands neither alone nor with the explanation of others. The first kind is excellent. The second is excellent. The third is useless. Oh, God. Which kind are you? Number 4, meditation 4, number 3. That all these things that thou seest change immediately and will no longer be, and constantly bear in mind how many of these things thou hast already witnessed. The universe is transformation. Life is opinion. This is very important in the observation by Marcus. We see it repeatedly in meditation, that all things are flowing. He got this from Heraclitus, I believe. Okay. Everything else is opinion. The universe is always changing. Everything is changing. As an observer, you're observing different things. Everything. Life is opinion. Life is opinion. Your opinion, my opinion. Someone said opinions are like buttholes. Everyone has one. You can look that up. That's been said a lot of times. Everybody's got an opinion. And while that's true, Marcus observed correctly, you have to be able to discern the truth from the false in terms of opinions. Wouldn't you agree to that? Wouldn't you agree? So what is the truth? In other words, how do you know that my observation is any more true than your observation or your opinion? As Jiminy's philosopher teacher once said, what do you do with a fact? What do you do with that speed of light travels, so many miles? What do you do with that? Can't keep you warm at night. You can't eat it. The search for truth is a lifelong endeavor. That's what we're doing now by reading the meditation. Teilhard de Chardin wrote in The Phenomena of Man, the child is terrified when it opens its eyes for the first time. Similarly, for our mind to adjust itself to lines, horizons enlarged beyond measure, it must renounce the comfort of familiar narrowness. It, your mind, must create a new equilibrium for everything that has formerly been so neatly arranged in a small world. He's talking about when your blackboard gets erased by you. It is dazzled when it emerges from its dark prison, and it's awed to find itself suddenly at the top of a tower. And it suffers from giddiness and disorientation, and the whole psychology of modern disquiet is linked with the sudden confrontation with space-time. He was a Jesuit and a paleontologist, and he noted that when we probe beyond a certain degree of depth and dilution, the familiar properties of our bodies, light, color, warmth, lose their meaning. Our sensory experience turns out to be a floating condensation on a swarm of the undefinable. In other words, it's really a mess. It's a mess. He was talking about layers of understanding. Well, Jimmy, I'm just not that smart. No, you don't have to be smart. You don't have to be that smart. What you have to be is curious. You have to be curious. You have to search for truth. What is the truth? You really do. And if you don't, well, that's okay too. It's your life, and you're going to lead it the way you want to lead it, right? Herman Hesse, I should end this with that. It's the game. It's your life. You're going to make of it what you will. I'll read you that quote in another analysis, if not the end of this one. Marcus probed beyond that degree through his meditations. Meditation 4, number 12. A man should always have these two rules in readiness. The one, to do only whatever the reason of the ruling and legislative faculty may suggest for the use of men. What is the ruling and legislative faculty? It's your reason, right? The reason. It's your reason. And the other, to change thy opinion if there is anyone in hand who sets thee right and moves thee from any opinion. Be open to discourse. But this change of opinion must proceed only from a certain persuasion. In other words, don't be fickle as to what is just and of common advantage and the like, not because it appears pleasant or brings reputation. In other words, if you're going to change your opinion about something, make sure it's really true. Wow. The philosopher most associated with the idea of keeping an open mind of your beliefs and, presented with contradicting facts is Aristotle. Marcus liked Aristotle. Aristotle's principle of non-contradiction emphasizes the importance of being willing to adjust your viewpoint with new evidence challenging your existing beliefs. Can I tell you how important that is to be open? Well, Jimmy, there's certain truths that are always time proven. Really, you just heard about the space time continuum when we talked about light years and how the light years may not be there. They used to believe the Earth is flat until they proved that it was not flat, and some people still believe it's flat. What you believe is very important. And I can just tell you that that's the way it's going to be. So Aristotle's discussion in metaphysics is considered most detailed attempt to defend this principle of non-contradiction. The principle states that contradictions can't be true. Of course not. So Aristotle's opponents, right, some contradictions are true. I don't know if that's true. I don't think yes cannot be a no. That's a contradiction, right? State of flux. So what is Marcus saying here? That we should keep these two rules in mind. And I think what we'll do is we're going to stop there, and I'm going to pick this up with the next meditation because we've been going a long time now. So I'm going to stop there. Let me jump down here. We're on page 14, right? And I'm going to stop there and learn more about Marcus Aurelius. We're going to finish this analysis of the first 6 meditations when we come back. Thank you for staying with me. Email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, and I'll talk to you very soon. Thanks so much.